If you've ever had that creeping sense that you're being watched in your own house, not by ghosts, but by someone with a clipboard and a bad attitude, then you're going to get exactly where I'm coming from. The first time Karen Mitchell let herself into my living room, every hair on my neck stood up. Not because of the sound of her heels clacking on the floor or the way she paused to judge every corner of my space, but because in that moment I realized I wasn't the master of my own home anymore. She was. You know that feeling, that slow burn in your chest when someone crosses a line they had no business even looking at. She looked at me like she expected me to apologize for her being in my house, like every inch of my life was hers to command. That was the day I decided, not this time, not this guy, and especially not with her. Let me back up a sec. 2 years ago, I walked away from the legal grind in the city. Yeah, I was one of those lawyers always running on coffee and spite, bought a cozy house in Meadowbrook Gardens just outside of San Diego, hoping for a taste of actual peace. Garden porch swing phone on silent, the whole suburban starter kit. I'm Marcus Thompson, just Marcus to everyone around here, though I guess a few folks know me now for different reasons. What I didn't realize back then was that moving to Meadowbrook wasn't buying peace. It was renting it month to month, and Karen Mitchell was the landlord of my sanity. Karen, HOA President Queen Bee, whatever you want to call her, was 42, ran the place like a cruise director with a god complex, and prided herself on knowing every blade of grass that didn't fit the vision. For 3 years, she'd ruled with a pastel iron fist, and my hope was to just keep my head down, plant some sunflowers, and maybe meet a neighbor or two who didn't treat the rule book like the 10 Commandments. Sunflowers. That's where it started. I planted them in my yard because, I don't know, they made me feel like a kid again. Reminded me of summers at my grandma's farm. They shot up to 5 feet tall, bright and happy. Honestly, I thought they made the neighborhood look better. Turns out, I was 1 foot over the maximum plant height, per some ancient HOA scroll nobody'd bothered to update since Clinton was president. I figured, come on, who cares about an extra foot? Karen cared. Next morning, I find a $500 fine taped to my front door, big, bold, and signed with her name in pen that screamed permanent marker, permanent power. So I went to her house thinking, hey, maybe we can be adults about this. She opens the door, gives me this tight little smile that stopped about 2 inches short of her eyes. Rules are rules, Mr. Thompson, she says like she's reading it off a cue card. You can pay the fine or dig up your flowers, 48 hours, no exceptions. She didn't want to talk, she wanted compliance. That's not really how sunflowers work. I try to explain you can't just give them a trim and expect them to keep living. She shrugs. That sounds like a you problem. And just like that, she slams the door on what I'd hoped was going to be a neighborly relationship. That's when the campaign started. Her words, not mine. Clipboard patrols popping up on my street at all hours, snapping photos, jotting notes, making me feel like I was starring in a reality show I never signed up for. Trash can, 2 inches out of place. $50. Lawnmower on the driveway, after mowing $75. Parked my car barely over the line, $100 ticket, and a warning that my vehicle would be towed at my own risk. In 2 weeks, I was down over $1 and $200, and I swear the next fine was going to be for breathing out of rhythm with the HOA guidelines. The money sucked, but the isolation was what really got to me. Karen didn't just find me, she went around whispering to neighbors, dropping hints that maybe I was up to something, what with all my official-looking mail and serious phone calls. Suddenly, I'm the sketchy guy in the neighborhood. People I'd waved to just started crossing the street, kids stopped playing near my yard, and I got more cold stares than a snowman at a July picnic. It all blew up at the next HOA meeting. She stood up reading off my violations like she was prosecuting a case, listing each one, drawing out every threat to property values. When I tried to speak, she shut me down with only compliant members may address the assembly. And just like that, she declared I was the danger to the community, maybe even a little unstable. Her people clapped, and for a split second I thought this is what it feels like to be gaslit by an entire neighborhood. Then came the real kicker, the invasion. I still don't know how she got a key, but one afternoon, Karen let herself into my house. I come home to find her in my living room, phone out, snapping pictures, narrating her surprise HOA inspection. She told me some made-up rule about interior inspections that I had to let her ensure no illegal activities were happening. She's in my kitchen in my bedroom, opening cabinets, snapping shots of my prescription bottles like she's on an episode of Law & Order Neighborhood Unit. Now, I could have blown up, but I played it cold. I let her dig her own grave, turned on my phone recorder, trailed behind her, documenting every illegal move, every smug comment. She made jokes about my legal book, said my fridge was a potential pest hazard, snapped photos of everything, including my medicine cabinet, all the while completely oblivious to how deeply she was incriminating herself. That night, I got to work. Dug up the original HOA charter, checked every amendment, pulled state laws, and discovered, shock of all shocks, that the interior inspection rule never existed. She'd forged it at a sham meeting with barely 5 residents present, nowhere near the 2/3 majority required. That was just the start. In the dusty digital corners of HOA financial records, I found she'd been funneling contracts to her husband's landscaping company at triple the going rate, paying for her own backyard renovations with our fines, and generally running a mini mafia with a fake smile and a clipboard. Nearly $47,000 had disappeared under her watch. Turns out I wasn't the only victim. I talked to Robert, a retired accountant he'd been fined for dangerous bookshelf height. Sarah, a nurse, got written up for her kids' bike blocking community access. Sweet old Mrs. Patterson had her garden gnomes declared a public nuisance. All the stories added up, but the real break came when I finally cornered Karen's husband David out in his garage one night. He looked beat, more tired than any man I've ever seen. When I mentioned legal trouble, he exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for a year. "I can't stop her," he admitted, "but I can help you." He gave me emails, phone recordings, bank statements, enough evidence to bury a small country, let alone an HOA tyrant. So I did what I do best, built a case. Quietly, methodically, until the day I called for an emergency HOA meeting, using a clause so buried in the bylaws, even Karen hadn't bothered to memorize it. She tried to block it, of course, threatened more fines, told people it was just sour grapes. But by now, word had spread. The community center was packed, standing room only. Karen strolled in, ready to drop the hammer on me, except this time I had the anvil. She opened with her usual act, but I stood up calm as you please and asked, "Mrs. Mitchell, are you aware that entering someone's home without permission is a federal felony?" You could hear a pin drop. She blustered about HOA authority, but then I played the video, her in my house, opening drawers, making herself at home like she was on a royal tour. Faces in the crowd went from confused to horrified in seconds. But I wasn't done. I put her financials up on the projector, contracts, receipts, checks cut to her husband, all the embezzlement. The crowd started to boil, people shouting about playground funds, broken pools, all the things that had gone missing under her reign. One by one, neighbors stood up. Sarah in tears, Robert with his spreadsheets, Mrs. Patterson shaking as she talked about her gnomes. The spell was broken. For the first time, people saw her for what she was. And then in a last-ditch effort, Karen snapped. She ranted about how I was just the first brick in her empire, that she'd been working with other HOAs to spread her methods, that we hadn't seen real power yet. It was so over the top, nobody could believe they'd trusted her with a lemonade stand, let alone their homes. So I dropped the final card, told the room I wasn't just Marcus, their neighbor, but a sitting federal judge. You should have seen Karen's face. She collapsed right back into her chair, and the police, who I'd briefed ahead of time, came in to take her away. Fraud, embezzlement, conspiracy, the whole 9 yards. David filed for divorce, became the star witness, and Karen ended up with 7 years in federal prison. The money she stole came back to fix the playground, rebuild the pool, and every bogus fine got refunded. Life in Meadowbrook changed overnight. Robert got elected HOA president, real transparency, no more clipboard patrols. Sunflowers became the neighborhood mascot. People started putting them in their yards as a quiet never again to anyone who thought they could bully their way to power. Now, 2 years later, I'm still here, my sunflowers even taller. A new family in Karen's old house. Laughter on the streets, and not a single fine in sight. And when a nervous couple shows up at my door, violation notice in hand, wondering what to do about the latest HOA nonsense, I just smile, wave them in, and say, "Let's take a look at that together." Because sometimes justice isn't loud or dramatic, it's just standing up one neighbor at a time and refusing to let petty tyrants win. So what do you think? Was I right to fight back? Where's the line between community and control? Let's hear your stories. Drop a comment, because trust me, we've all had our own run-ins with a Karen or two.